Welcome to the Rob Call Bottom Up Show, sponsored by opednews.com, available on Pacifica Radio, Progressive Radio Network, iTunes, and at opednews.com/podcasts. My guest for this show is Jeff Bullas. Jeff blogs on social media marketing at jeffbullas.com, jeffbullas.com. His blog is read by over 4 million visitors a year. He's listed as one of the top 50 social media power influencers. He's been listed on HuffPost as one of the top 100 business leadership and technology Twitter accounts you must follow. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be here.
Yeah. So how would you describe what you do?
I am a hybrid publisher educator online, so sometimes known as a blogger. So that's the technical term, I suppose, blogger. But yeah, we actually publish content about how to grow your business and how to win at business and life in a digital world. So that's really what we do.
So I think you started out as a blogger and you've kind of grown and expanded, right?
Yeah, we do a range of things all around that. So, but initially it was about just sharing my ideas with the world via a platform, which I came up with a really creative name called jeffbullas.com because I didn't have any other ideas at the time. Luckily, I had a strange name because I was able to get the domain name .com. So if I was johnsmith.com, I wouldn't have been able to get it maybe, but Jeff Bullas being a strange name in the schoolyard worked to be an advantage later on when I went looking for a domain name. So yeah, I was just fascinated by social media's, I suppose, rise in consciousness around about 2008, I noticed it. And I just said, wow, there's something going on here. I noticed people's obsession with Facebook and noticed the same activity on Twitter. I went, something's going on and I think it might be worth writing about. And I came across a book by David Meerman Scott called The New Rules of Marketing and PR. And he talked about the ability of content to attract an audience. Instead of cold calling to chase a customer, you actually created the best content you could online and actually attracted a customer. So it's called inbound marketing. And I went, wow, that's pretty cool. I like that idea because I've done a lot of cold calling in my time. And a lot of us who've started a business or are an entrepreneur, a lot of us started by cold calling or help grow a business for other companies using cold calling. So that's pretty cool. And then I read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Work Week, which a lot of us have.
I have.
Yep. And Tim sort of opened my eyes a little bit more to this emerging digital entrepreneur world that I knew of, but he just put it in a perspective that I thought was very cool.
Summarize just what you got out of Tim Ferriss that inspired you.
The ability to create, I suppose, a life that isn't necessarily tied to location. It's not tied to actually renting an office, hiring a sales team, buying expensive equipment, committing to an expensive lease. It's more about creating a digital business because the world of business, as we know, has changed a lot over the last 15, 20 years, and especially in the last 5 years. So I just like the perspective of us creating a business that was not restricted by geography or by a country, but you had access to the world and you could do it in a variety of ways. So I like the perspective he gave to being a digital entrepreneur. And you could do it in a way in which suited you. You didn't have to work with the old paradigms of what I described before, like you've got to rent an office, you've got to get a landline, you've got to commit to expensive leases. So I like that. So for me, that was the perspective I got out of the 4-Hour Work Week. It just gave me, I suppose, a idea about how business could be done in this digital world.
And the other thing, I agree. And the other thing I got out of it was you're not tied into any 9-to-5 kind of job. You can do it when you want to, and you can hire people anywhere in the world to be your assistants and to help you to get the parts of the job done that you don't like to do yourself. Yeah,
and that's exactly so. And looking back at that and looking at where I am today, that's exactly what I've done. It was just a dream 9 years ago, but today it became a reality as And the last step and last inspiration was I came across a blog post by HubSpot called which said if you have an inkling of what you want to write about or publish or start a business on, start a blog. And I didn't even know what a blog was back then. And I said, okay, what's a blog? So I said, really, it's just a website that allows you to publish an article and share it. So I signed up to a free version of WordPress, used a template, bought my $10 domain name and started writing badly. But I started, and this little passion project inspired by several factors that I've just described sort of just slowly grew. I got a few followers on Twitter, and then I shared my content with them and they shared it with others, and the crowdsourced marketing took over. And I realized quickly that building distribution, not only just creating content, but building my own distribution gave me power to reach the world without begging permission or paying for it, or, trying to get the media moguls or paying them to actually do it. So that's what really excited me, was this ability to actually reach the world without begging permission or paying for attention. And that's what the social media networks offered.
Now, when you say paying for attention, you're talking about doing things like paying for ads anywhere, really.
Exactly. So, yeah, and I've paid for that. I've paid for, advertisements in newspapers. I've done radio. I've done, a variety of things. But it's expensive. And the reality is that a newspaper ad today is lining the bin tomorrow. It has no longevity or endurance. Whereas you create content, it actually sits there as long as the lights are left on and Google's still indexing it. You'll be discovered in search, for example, or you'll be found in a tweet or a Facebook post. So
you're getting into talking about content. Now, one of your areas of expertise is content marketing.
Yep.
So, and there's one is content marketing and the other is social media, and they really overlap, of course.
Yep. Yep.
So, talk about how you transitioned from being a blogger to being an expert on content marketing.
Okay, so being a blogger meant that you actually had to create content. So I started to discover and got better at writing. So I didn't write very well. I'm not a trained writer. I did do a teaching degree. That was my original career. I could string 3 or 4 words together, maybe 10 or 12, and put them into a sentence, and it seemed to make sense. But essentially, by starting to write, I was becoming a content marketer. I didn't even know that term really wasn't used. The term really used back then was inbound marketing. And essentially, inbound marketing is a term that's being, I suppose, almost owned by HubSpot and David Meerman Scott. But essentially, inbound marketing is the same as content marketing. It's where you actually attract an audience by sharing your ideas online. But there's a second part to content marketing. A lot of people
explain what inbound marketing is, since you've brought it up twice now.
Okay. Inbound marketing is essentially the same as content marketing. HubSpot might differ with me, but it's essentially the same. It's the ability to actually write something that intrigues or interests people. They want to read, and then they want to come back and read again. But while you're doing that, you actually might capture their email address by offering something of value, like a free ebook or a cheat sheet or a template or a tools PDF. So it's not just about the content. You actually have got to hold their attention and also get them to start following you or subscribing to you. So content marketing is inbound marketing.
And one of the things I understand about inbound marketing is the difference between inbound marketing and the other kind is that you're not trying to close somebody right away, except to get a relationship with them through an email.
Yeah.
Generally. And what you're trying to do is build a relationship and get them to be connected to you on a more regular basis, so that eventually you can make something bigger happen.
Yeah. And essentially, the tactic that's done by a lot of bloggers and others that started at the same time as me and today is they really don't chase sales for maybe the first 6 months or more, or 12 months. what they're doing is building a tribe of followers and people that love their stuff before they need them. And while they're doing that by adding great value, they're actually building credibility and trust. And once you've done that, and you've educated them, built that credibility and trust, then, just like Kevin Kelly said in his rant back in 2008, 1,000 true fans. You don't need 1 million fans. You just need 1,000 true fans that will buy off you. And the way you build fans, as you know, is whether you're a singer, you just create great songs. If you're a writer, you just write great content. If you're a videographer, you create great videos, right? If you're a podcaster, you actually just do great podcasts.
Like we're doing now.
Exactly. So
a great start too.
Yeah, so it doesn't need to be overcomplicated. And I say to people, a lot of people say, well, I want to start this business, I want to do this, I want to do that. And going, why don't you just build some followers and fans that will love you, and then you can sell to them later. In other words, build a tribe before you need them. Build followers and subscribers before you need them. And that's essentially what I did. I wasn't really chasing money or trying to close sales early on. And I remember I was about a year in, and I had this email from a friend, from a guy called Johnny. And Johnny had written this very short email and said, look, I've been reading your content, love it. Would you be interested in coming over to New Zealand and running a workshop? And I went, is this guy for real? Because you get those sort of inquiries. And so I almost ignored him because it wasn't a well-written email and very short. But I did a little bit of homework on Johnny, and I just discovered that he happened to be one of New Zealand's richest entrepreneurs. So I said, okay. So we arranged a fee, and we went over and spoke at his golf resort just outside Christchurch, New Zealand, at Terrace Downs. And I remember having dinner that night, and over a glass of wine, he said, Jeff, look, I've got this little startup. I've sort of made my money in Japan, one of the first foreign companies to ever float a company in Japan in around 2000. That's where he made his millions. And he said, look, I'd be interested if you want to be, are you interested in being on the board? And also we'll give you shares of the startup that I'm doing called Shuttle Rock. And I went, okay, I'm in. So that firsthand really showed to me the power of content to attract an opportunity. And that continued. And
so what did you talk about? What were you invited to give a workshop on?
It was the very early days of social media. So everyone was going, well, you know, does social media really work? How do you use it? How do you use Facebook? How do you use Twitter? How do you turn those platforms, how do you use them to actually grow your business? So that's what I shared that day, is essentially my own experience in using social media to build global attention. And that's where it starts.
Using social media to build global attention. Now, I got to tell you, I think I started following you at least 6 or 7 years ago on Twitter. Right. And so it's almost like I've known you for a long time. It's and that's, I think, part of this inbound marketing process. Not that necessarily Twitter is a key part of inbound marketing, or maybe it is.
Yeah. Twitter's just one social media network that can get you attention or get you noticed. Twitter tends to be a bit of a blunter tool than Facebook, but the reality is, and this really hit me, and it was about 6-7 years ago, and I was invited to speak in Italy, and I went over there and spoke at a digital marketing conference, and we sat down for dinner one night, and I said to them, I said, why did you invite me to speak? I said, you don't know me. I didn't come through a speakers bureau. And they said, we saw you everywhere. And that's a really interesting thing. And I explored that a little bit further. And Edelman, the big global PR company, puts out what they call the trust barometer every year. And it measures what creates trust, whether it's for companies, whether it's for countries, whether it's for individuals, or whether it's for organizations. And the research showed something very interesting, in that if you're seen just once or twice, people's trust and your credibility factor or level is about 3 to 5%. If you're seen 3 to 5 times, your trust goes up to 55%. And you just And you just think about it. If you see someone once, they just pass your consciousness, or a brand, fine. But you start seeing them pop up on Twitter, you see them pop up on Facebook, you might see them on YouTube. You're going, hang on, these guys are everywhere.
So how did you get everywhere?
I relentlessly worked on building my global distribution on social networks. So I would post my content on YouTube, I would post it on Twitter, I'd post it on Facebook, I'd post it on SlideShare, I'd put it on LinkedIn, I would put it on Pinterest, you know. So, and essentially that is still the strategy, is to be ubiquitous. And I think it's really important to understand is that content marketing or inbound marketing is 2 words, and the last word is marketing. So it doesn't mean just create content, wait for the world to show up. You've actually got to build distribution. And that comes building an email list, building social media following. Okay, it's all of those. Earning authority on search engines, so you rank on the first page of Google for key terms. And that, again, adds to the whole credibility and trust that you're building with your brand, whether it's personal, whether it's corporate. So some of these moments in my career and in the blogging space and in what I've been doing were those 2 highlights for me that really just confirmed what I'd actually already been doing, but it just put a stake in the ground going, what you're doing, Jeff, is actually working. Because David Meerman Scott of inbound marketing, of attracting an audience, was really I just started an experiment. It was really just a passion project to see if it actually worked. I liked the idea, but would it work if I did it? And would it actually, number one, would it actually attract attention? Yes. Could I actually make money out of it? Yes. Could I turn it into a full-time business? Yes. So it answered all those, I suppose, doubts that I had about it and looking at it from a distance as an outsider. So today, what Tim Ferriss described back then is that being able to work anywhere around the world and not having restricted by an office or restricted by having employees sitting expensive payroll. So I have a virtual team, okay? So, and I can work from anywhere in the world. And so this dream lifestyle of actually being able to work anywhere with flexibility, whether I'm traveling or whether I'm sitting in my home office or in the office, proved to be true. So
talk about your virtual team. What you don't have employees, or do you have employees, but they're virtual?
No, they're virtual contractors, if you like. So it gives me a lot of flexibility. But they're passionate people. They love what they do. So I realized it after about 4 or 5 years of creating content that it wasn't going to scale very easily. So I needed to actually be able to create content without me sitting down every morning and hitting a blog post publish at 9 a.m. because that's what I did for about 4 years. I got up at 4:30 a.m. and created content.
Because I read your article about that.
Yeah.
Yesterday afternoon, I said to myself, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
So I went to bed early and I got up really early, and around 3-4 o'clock today, it was like, am I going to make this? But here we are.
Yeah. Because this is what's really fascinating about this for me, is that I got up at 4:30 a.m. for those 4 years. I don't get up that early now. I get up around about 5:30, 6 o'clock, because I was actually had a day job at the time when I was started the blog. So I had a 9 a.m. commitment to actually work for an employee who was in a digital agency. And so I was writing late at night and creating content late at night and then sharing it with, as I saw America wake up, because I'm based in Sydney, Australia. And America wakes up about 11 p.m. our time in Sydney. So I was writing late at night, and then I'd publish, and then I'd share it and have conversations with other people on Twitter, which were sort of, I suppose, part of my tribe that I'd been growing. And then I'd flipped it to a 4:30 a.m. I realized that, evenings can get in the way because you go out for dinner with friends and suddenly you've got to come back, and at 10 o'clock you've got to write something. I went, well, this is not really working. So I made a commitment to get up at 4:30, and I did that for 4 years, 5 days a week. And I just sat down and
you're going to tell us what you did after a brief station ID. So this is the Rob Cole Bottom Up Show, sponsored by Op-Ed News, available on Pacifica Radio, on Progressive Radio Network, at opednews.com/podcasts, on iTunes. And you're listening to Jeff Bullas, BULLAS.com. JeffBullas.com is his website. He's a social media marketing expert. He's got 4 million visitors a year to his website. Now, go back. So you started waking up at 4:30 and you flipped something. How did you change?
I dropped my son off to go to work one day, and I got up early to take him to the train station. And I had time between, it's like 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. I said, there's no point going back to bed. So I said, I'll write now. And as I sat down in the quiet of the morning with no one else around, the garbage trucks hadn't even arrived. It was just my time, no interruptions. And as I did that morning, I went, wow, it's just my time, no interruptions. So I said, I'll keep doing this. And I committed to doing it. So went off, and it was tough. But what's really cool is that a lot of us get stuck in what I call doing shallow work. And I came across a book by a guy called Cal Newport. Now, Cal wrote a book called Deep Work. And I discovered it about a year ago. And he talks about that a lot of us get stuck in shallow work, responding to emails, just doing tasks for the boss, or just not creating any content of consequence. In other words, you're doing stuff, right? And you've got to do stuff, right? But you do need to set aside some time to do deep work. And he described different ways of doing it. He said that some people, like academics, will go and do a sabbatical. They'll go away and they'll write for 3 months. Okay. He talked about other people that are psychologists, like Jung. Jung basically had a weekend cottage near Geneva, and he'd go and write for the weekend. He said there's another way of doing it, which is called rhythm. Okay, the rhythm approach, which is basically every day you commit to spending some time creating work of consequence, or content of consequence. And that's what he gave a name to it, called deep work. And I realized what he was describing was something that I actually had been doing.
It was your 4:30 process.
Yep. Yeah, the 4:30 a.m. habit just transformed my life. I realized that commitment to doing that every day allowed me to create a body of work that built the foundations for where I am today.
So what did you do? What did you actually do in that deep work time from 4:30 in the morning?
I would write a blog post of 500 to 1,000 words and be doing research as I did that. I have an idea, maybe. I have a bunch of ideas, and I'd take the one that appealed to me that morning, or I'd already started on, and I'd actually start putting together. I would go and do screenshots. I'd do case studies. I would actually be doing research about how Twitter could help with your marketing, or how Facebook campaigns worked, or what's the most important thing that you need to do. If you're going to be writing a blog post. So I just...
What's the most important thing you need to be doing if you're writing a blog post?
Have a very, very good headline.
Well, how do you do that?
Okay, you need to learn some of the art of headline to be able to write controversial headlines, or write blog posts that add value to people's lives, or do case studies, or write about industry trends. So there's different types of content that work in different industries, but I discovered different types of content that really resonated. And I learned the art of writing headlines. Okay, so number one, write a controversial headline. Okay, so for me, I wrote a blog post about 3 years ago, which went viral. And the headline was, "Why You Should Forget Facebook." Okay, and the premise was Facebook was reducing its organic reach. So the premise, backed by research, showed that Facebook's organic reach was plummeting, into the single digits. In other words, if you wanted to get attention on Facebook, you basically had to pay for it. And that's what Facebook has done over the last 3 or 4 years. It's essentially become a pay-to-play model instead of the organic reach of social media that I was excited by 8, 9 years ago. So that was the premise of the blog post that I wrote. but the headline was "Why You Should Forget Facebook." And I remember it worked very well on my blog, and then I put it on LinkedIn, and it just exploded. I remember seeing traffic coming to my site that almost was just mind-boggling, and I realized the traffic was coming from LinkedIn. But that particular blog post that I repurposed and put on LinkedIn as an article was the top performing article globally on LinkedIn for a week.
Wow.
So we got 1,000 comments. It had 300,000 views, and it just took off. Maybe the premise there is people on LinkedIn hate Facebook. I don't know, but the reality.
You posted the full article or a link to the article on your website.
Yeah, so I took my article from my website. I took it and put it onto LinkedIn as an article, because LinkedIn essentially had started allowing you to publish full-length articles on their site. They discovered content marketing about 3 or 4 years ago. Took them a while. So, but essentially what happened then was it really, and this is what the thing about content, you don't know whether it's going to work well here, or if you put it somewhere else, it'll work there. So that's why you've not only got to test different social networks and different ways of distributing your content, you've got to test different types of content and where you publish your content.
Well, let me ask you this. You put an article that you originally published on your website on jeffbullas.com. Then you reprinted it on LinkedIn, the full article.
Yep.
How did you maximize your benefit from all that exposure?
Well, what I have now is I have a pop-up that allows people to get something of real value, like 101 plus traffic's tip ebook, 55 pages, 12,000 words. So when they actually come to read the article, a pop-up happens.
But wait, you said the article was on LinkedIn.
Yeah, but they've got links back to my site as well. So you're going to get a lot of traffic from that. So
how did you put the links back to your site? Were they in your article in different places then, basically?
Yeah, it could basically, the bottom said this article was originally written, at jeffbullas.com. Read the rest of it. Well, not rest of it was all there, but want to read some more about what we've written, come and visit us. So we didn't get all that traffic from LinkedIn back there, but you get a lot of overflow, and that's what you got to do. You actually got to give people the opportunity to go back to your site.
I'm really getting into it because, I've published over 100,000 articles at my blog, which started out as a personal blog too, op-ed news. Yeah. Over the years, we've seen almost 24 million people come to the site. And, people, they wonder, should they take their content from their blog and put it somewhere else that's a higher traffic place? Talk about that. Because that's what you did basically with your article on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, and typically I'll put it on Medium, for example, as well. I'll actually write the headline and put it on Facebook. So, it's different tactics for different types of platforms. You could turn a blog post into a PowerPoint presentation that just summarizes it, and actually then you have a link which goes back to your site from SlideShare. You can do an update on LinkedIn that actually goes back to your site as well, which might be just a little bit of I suppose, inspirational piece that might tell a story, but then you want to hear more about the story and the point from the story, that you go back to your blog and read it there. So it goes back to my original idea of being ubiquitous that I discovered in Italy. The reality is that you do need to put your content in a variety of places and also build multiple distribution for those pieces of content as well.
Okay.
And yeah, it sounds complicated, but the reality is when you start, you don't need to overcomplicate it. Maybe just focus on one social network or 2 or 3. Just focus on creating one type of content. For you, it might be a podcast. For me, it will be, a written post. So you need to find what you love doing or what you love writing about, and then actually put it in a medium that you actually enjoy. And then you can get, ziggy with it later. Like you can actually take the original content and turn it into multiple pieces of content and different media. So, but you don't need to overcomplicate it.
Okay, so I just want to continue. You were talking about one of the main things is getting a really good headline, a good title.
Yep.
Now,
yep.
I've written an article about that myself years ago, because I've got writers, and I get writers, and they give me these awful titles like, "Oh, that's amazing," or "Gee, isn't that interesting?" I mean, those are titles that they give me, and they're horrible, awful titles. And you know, so when you're thinking of a title, I mean, one of the things is SEO. You want to make sure that your title is going to get picked up by search engines, and you're going to, right? You want to have maximize your search engine optimization with your title for sure, right?
Yeah. So you need to work out, you know, some of the planning for your content as you get a little bit more savvy, as you get more experience, or you get some good experts to help you. Say, okay, what are 10 key phrases that people are looking for on Google that people are using when they're looking in my ecosystem of content or subject area? And you can do that in a variety of ways. I won't go into that now, but the reality is that then you use those phrases, you know, both in the headline maybe, or within the headline, also within the content, and then optimize it using tools like Yoast, for example, Yoast SEO. So Yoast.
Talk about Yoast. What is Yoast?
Yoast is just a plugin for WordPress, which a lot of people use, which essentially is, it asks you to do about 4 or 5 key things. And when you get them right for SEO, it actually, which is just content driven, it'll give you a green light going SEO friendly.
Cool.
Okay. So, and it might, for example, that you've got the phrase in the headline, you've got it in the URL, you've got it in the body of the text, and you've got it in your meta description, which is the little piece of text that appears under the headline in Google search. Okay. So they're essentially the 4 key things, without overcomplicating, that will help you when Google's crawling your site. They'll actually pick up that key phrase, which is in those 4 places. And I'm oversimplifying it a bit here, but to get the gist of how it works.
Yeah.
And the other thing about SEO too is it's something that keeps giving. And a lot of people are after a quick fix, right? I want viral traffic today, right? And as you know, viral traffic is a bit hit and miss. It's, you know, you got to tick all the buttons, emotional, everything, to actually get it to go viral. And when you get something that goes viral, it's a bonus, but you shouldn't be counting on it to actually be your day-to-day traffic source. So what I love about search engines is that they can drive 300 to 500% more traffic than social media. But it takes time to earn that authority, because Google is giving you ranking, and you're earning authority with them. And it's a medium to long-term approach.
Okay, so explain what authority is.
Okay, Google keeps changing the rules and how it does, but let's just distill it to the absolute essence of how Google gave authority, which is basically ranking. And the way they do ranking is they'd actually crawl your site and find who's linking to your site. So, for example, inbound links to your site, in other words, you've been reading a blog post and it's got a link to my site in it. Read more about what Jeff said or whatever. And then that is an inbound link to your site. So, but if you've got a shepherd in Kazakhstan linking to your site from your sheep site, Google goes, oh, that's interesting. You know, it's a little site from Russia. Russia's maybe the wrong term to use at the moment. But on the other hand, you have a link from the New York Times to your site, which I do have, by the way. And Google goes, wow, look at all these sites linking to Jeff's site. So as you get more of those high authority sites that link to you, it gives a signals to Google going, that must be content of consequence. It must be content that's got authority. So over time, as you create more and more content and more people link to you from their websites, you start to build authority. Now that's it at its most simple level. There are other things like page speed load and all those sorts of things. But
I saw one infographic that listed 300 different factors that Google uses in weighing page rank.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So, and when you really get down to it, there's two parts to earning authority with Google. Number one, there's a technical aspect. In other words, building your website so Google can easily identify what you're saying and the key phrases. That's it at a very simple level. Then the other part of SEO, to keep it simple, is the content you're creating. So, and what's happening too in that content part is that people are now doing what they call pillar content, long-form content that becomes maybe the best piece of content on the topic globally. And we're seeing insane length articles being written to actually do that. And I saw a digital marketer example the other day, said they're going to write a 50,000 word blog post. Okay, so it's basically like a good mate of mine, Mark Schaefer, called it content shock. So the race is still on to actually create great content, and you're now competing with literally millions of people in your category, or tens of thousands of people in your category. Yeah, so it's a lot harder. It's a bit harder to do than it was 10 years ago, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. And also being in a smaller niche can help as well.
So are there technologies or right now I'm reading Tim O'Reilly's book, WTF, What's the Future?
Yeah.
And it's a really good book. And he talks about how the future is often already with us in some way. And then people innovate and adapt it to other ways. Are there any things that you're doing that are really cutting edge, bleeding edge, that you're really excited about that you've just started with recently? Any new technologies, any new applications, any apps or websites that enable you to do things better, smarter, more automated?
Yeah, the key term is automation, which is I have been using actually for a couple of years now, because I realized that to scale me and to scale the brand, I needed help. I needed the machines. So we use a marketing automation platform which actually allows me to send 3 million emails a month, to actually be able to segment those as well. Now, this is the first stage of the marketing revolution. In other words, marketing has become an art and a science. Originally, the madmen of Madison Avenue were sat down over martinis and created great creative content, right? That's the art. You know, the art of the headline, the art of content that actually resonates and touches people's emotions. But now marketing has become a science. And that's something that I'm really continuing to research and working on. And that's why I implemented 2.5 years ago a marketing automation platform. I think that now that, and this is what really exciting me now, is we're moving into the age of intelligence, artificial intelligence, which is what Tim Riley's book is about. And I've read Tim's book, by the way, and also I'm in the middle of reading another book which is fascinating, and it's about what it means to be human in the age of intelligence.
What's the book? Who's it by?
The books, I'll just look it up. I can't remember the name of it. So it's very fascinating, because it actually gets down to the whole future of work and business and life. How to be human in the age of intelligence. And there's another good book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution, which is the age of intelligence as well. So it's written by, okay, what's his name here? Okay.
No, I'll put it in the notes. We'll just get it. You'll get it after we're done, okay?
Yep. So written by Max Tegmark. Okay, so it's really looking at the implications of what AI is starting to its impact in how we do business, how we interact with our technologies and devices, how it impacts work, how it's going to impact marketing. So I'm certainly have a watching brief on the whole AI space. So I just came back from Dreamforce in San Francisco, which is the big conference put on by Salesforce with 170,000 people, quite an amazing event. And the central theme of it was artificial intelligence as one of its core themes. And I remember interviewing one of the executives for a company based in Australia, in Melbourne, but an American company. And he talked about the fact that above everything else now, he's seeing that marketing technology is now the one that adds the most value to a business. Now, that is a huge change above everything else, from accounting systems to CRM systems to, all the other technologies that are used to actually run a business. He said
I'll tell you, I invented something and got massive attention all over the media. And Thomas Edison once said that an invention is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration.
Absolutely.
I disagree. It's 0.01% inspiration, 0.99% perspiration, and 99% marketing and distribution.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've been saying that for at least 30 years.
Yeah. Well, people forget that there's a lot of great artists in the world, okay, that create just beautiful things, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's music, and most of them lie undiscovered. And the reason that you just mentioned is because they don't know how to market themselves or their brand.
It's not just artists, it's creators of any kind. It's writers, it's inventors, it's businesses that are great businesses.
Yeah, we are all creators. I think as human beings, we are innately creative. And that's, I think that's what excites me about this age of artificial intelligence. The fourth industrial revolution is touted in another book. And they used an analogy in one of those books, which was about, is that the Roman Empire became a great empire because it used slaves. Now, we struggle with that concept today, right? Okay, the slaves allowed the citizens of Rome to actually take time to think, the Plato's, the Aristotles, right? So that's what it allowed them to do. Okay, so the reality is that what's happening is that the drudgery of work is going to be replaced by technology and artificial intelligence. It takes away the drudgery. So that's why it's really interesting to look at what is the future of work? What is it like to be human in an age of artificial intelligence?
Get back to what you described as your marketing automation platform. I just need to do a brief station ID. This is the Rob Call Bottom Up Show, sponsored by Op-Ed News. The Bottom Up Show it's about I believe that we're transitioning from a more top-down to a more bottom-up culture, and that it's affecting everything. That's the way people were for millions of years before civilization, before industrial technology. And the internet has catalyzed a return to bottom up, and it's potentiating and awakening literally neurobiological genes that we have that make that all our buttons are now being pushed, and that's a whole new world that we're in. We're talking right now about business, but it's affecting everything. So my guest that you're listening to is Jeff Bullas. He's a blogger who blogs on social media and marketing and content marketing. His blog is jeffbullas.com. So Jeff, tell us. I want to get back to this idea, because you kind of spun off onto AI and the meaning of work when you started talking about marketing automation platform that you're using now.
Yep.
So tell us more about that.
Okay, so I realized that to keep reaching the world at scale, I needed a machine and a smarter machine. Okay, so I was just using email marketing platform, and I was using Aweber, and I'd used MailChimp before. But I realized I need something that actually was more powerful, and it's complicated. So I'm using Infusionsoft at the moment. But it allows me to actually run different paths, marketing funnels. And what's really cool about that is that you can do a broadcast, get people that are really interested in the topic, and then you actually then can just segment that, and the different paths to purchase can be different ways. So the marketing automation platform can use different technologies to actually allow us to create different paths to purchase.
Different paths to purchase. What's the word you're using?
Path, as in, is it my Australian accent?
Paths.
Path.
P-A-T-H. Okay, yes, that's your Australian accent.
Sorry, I'm an Australian, so I speak in a strange tongue. So the reality is that it allows you to actually do complicated things at scale. And essentially, this is the future of marketing.
Now, are you using, did you say that you're using Infusionsoft as
yes, using Infusionsoft, yeah. And you can do tagging, you can do a whole lot of things. Now, it's so complicated that I don't do much of it. I hire an expert who actually is in Colorado, United States. She's passionate about marketing funnels and automation, and that's her gig. So I let her, she gives great ideas. I have the strategies, and then she says, this is what we want to do, it's what we need to do. So you can have an expert from the other side of the world. But so I hired her to actually help me manage the platform and optimize the platform for my marketing. I attended a mastermind event in St. Louis in America, and actually, no, it was in Spokane in Idaho. I was at a mastermind in Spokane, Idaho, and a great team of entrepreneurs, digital entrepreneurs. And a guy said, I've got this great lady, I'm using her, you should use her, she's brilliant. So word of mouth, good old-fashioned word of mouth.
Okay.
But she just happens to be living in America, so that doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter at all.
Yeah. So we Skype once a week, and we keep in touch with email and different other texts and messaging platforms, and she's brilliant. So yeah, I don't have to be good at everything. I just need to be good at what I do, and then, as you said before, hand it off to other people to actually help me scale. So
we're getting down to the list. Well, we've got a little time yet, but tell me if you're talking to somebody who's not a beginner, but who's already got a website, they've already got some stuff up and running, what are the kind of bits of advice that you would give people who want to go to the next level?
It depends on what they're trying to do, I suppose, in their niche. But to go to the next level, I think they should be implementing, okay, let's say they've already got an email marketing platform. They maybe just got a website up and they're creating content. So I think what they really need to be concentrating on is, number one, continuing to build their distribution. I see a lot of what I even call, reasonable marketers, and they just, or people that are consultants or coaches, and they've created a real, I suppose, a thought leadership position. Might be on LinkedIn, for example. But yes, they've got a website, and yes, they've got an email list, but they just aren't optimizing that. So number one, continue to build your distribution. Okay, never ever stop doing that.
What does that mean?
It means, okay, number two, let's just do three things. Number one, I need to be continuing to build my email list. Okay, in other words, offer something of value which people will hand over their email to actually download a free ebook or cheat sheet or template. Number two, continue to grow your social network reach. So Twitter for me is my core platform, and also great about Twitter is it's still quite organic as opposed to Facebook. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be growing your Facebook following, but it's not as important organically. Now, then on the third tip is to make sure that you're continuing to optimize your site for search engines. Now, the challenge for that is that people don't get instant gratification from working on their search engine strategy, because it takes 6 months plus to actually start to get traction.
What are the kind of things that people can do the most, that most people aren't doing, that they should be doing for their SEO for their website?
I think the number one thing is the technical foundation can be quite poor. In other words, their website is not designed from day one for Google to actually easily crawl it. You've got to make it easy for Google, because it needs to say, okay, here are the key phrases. Here's my site map, for example. So the reality is that when you're building a digital brand, you're actually in there for the long haul. It's a long game. Because the reality is that the internet and search engines are going to be checking out your website until the electricity is turned off. Right?
That's right.
So the reality is you're actually building, and this is the thing you've got to think about too, it's a mindset. Is that advertising and marketing was thought of as an expense. The reality is that content and your digital presence is actually an asset. In other words, you are building for decades ahead. You want to be able to be found on search engines in 10 years, not just next day. You want to have an email list of 100,000, not just 1,000. And that takes time to build. And also building social media network distribution takes time to build. A lot of people want instant gratification. Now, that's one of the biggest challenges I see, is that people are not playing the long game. Now, you might want to get fast attention. That's easy. Okay, Facebook ads. Okay, targeted, global, but you have to pay. So if you've got a lot of time but no money, then you have to do the organic thing, right? Build it over time. And that's where I started. I had no money.
What about, how do you maximize using Facebook without money? What about Facebook?
Well, the reality is it's very hard to actually maximize Facebook without money. One of the best tactics I'm seeing lately is using Facebook video or Facebook live stream, because Facebook is really pushing its video content. Dennis Yu has a great strategy called the 1 minute video strategy. In other words, tell a story, make a point, and then maybe put a link at the bottom for people to get to your site, because Facebook's pushing video. The other one that's working well is actually Facebook Messenger. Huge engagement rates, much better than email. They're the two key strategies. Facebook video, Facebook Messenger are the two areas that you should be looking at from an organic point of view.
Facebook Messenger to scale, though, to a lot of people.
Okay, so what you do is when you're actually asking for the email side, you actually ask them to actually engage with a link with you on their Facebook Messenger as well. So you can include it in your email marketing strategy, whereas they actually engage via that. In other words, they can actually engage with you or sign up to be connected on Facebook Messenger when you are actually doing an email or creating content. So the reality is that Facebook Messenger has high engagement rates at the moment, but its reach is in like, I think 1.5 billion now, I think. So, and just about everyone who uses Facebook is now on Facebook Messenger, which is a separate app. But organically, they're the two key strategies that you need to be pursuing.
Are there third-party tools for working with?
Yes. Yeah.
What are the good ones?
Yeah. I don't know which ones. There's a bunch of ones out there which we've trialed. A few of them, I can't remember them off the top of my head. I'll leave that to my experts. But the reality is that it's certainly worth trialing Facebook Messenger to connect with your prospects and customers, and then using Facebook video, live video, to actually do that as well.
Very good. And so what do you use now? You say Twitter is your favorite social media. What do you use to access and work with Twitter? What are your third-party tools? Or
okay, so to continue to grow my Twitter following, I actually use two tools, and one I've been using for a long time called Tweepy. There's another tool I use which also builds my social following on Twitter, which is called Social Quant. They will help you grow your Twitter distribution, as in they will actually identify people that should be following, and they will automate part of the process.
That sounds cool. And are they free, or do you pay for them?
Tweepy, you need to pay. Basically, both are paid, but not much a month. I think one's $10 and the other one's $27 or $40. But one Social Quant's much more automated. Tweepy is a little bit manual. But the essential thing is, with building your Twitter following, you use what we call the law of reciprocation. And the law of reciprocation means if you follow someone, there's that sort of, when people see that you follow them, go, oh, should I follow them back? and I'll check out your Twitter following, notice you actually, maybe worth following, you've got some great content. They go, I'll follow them back. Law of reciprocation. So build your following on Twitter, and I use those two. Now, there's a second part of the strategy, was actually maybe 3. Number 2 is I need to then as I build my followers, I then start sharing my content on Twitter. So I tweet every 15 minutes, but I do it via automation.
What do you use to tweet every 15 minutes?
I use a platform called Agora Pulse. It's owned by a very lovely Frenchman out of Paris called Emeric Ermont. And essentially it's a competitor to Hootsuite and the others. Essentially, it allows you to load tweets and send them every 15 minutes.
How do you come up with 24 times 4, 96 tweets a day?
Because I've got a lot of content on my site. That's basically I've been creating for 9 years, and I create a lot of evergreen content that doesn't date easily.
And okay, so this automates it, so you don't have to come up every day with new stuff.
That's right. It's basically, the 10 principles of great content marketing, for example, and it's the headline, the link, an image, and I load up 500 of those, and they go out every 15 minutes, and we do a cycle every 6 days. So essentially, we're not doing any, we do repeat some other stuff because we're running campaigns, but on the other hand, just the core evergreen content is a database or bank of content that is sitting there that goes out every 15 minutes. And what happens then is someone did a study. Everyone said, when I started doing this 7 or 8 years ago, people said, you're flooding my inbox. Well, Twitter's actually not an inbox. It's actually just a stream. And what they did from a research point of view, they discovered that tweeting every 15 minutes actually almost doubled the engagement rate.
Wow. So, and I mean, if somebody is doing it manually, tweeting just 2 or 3 times a day is nothing really. I mean, you're doing it 50 times more.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it works.
So I want to get into another thing that you do. You trade digital content for contact information, for email, for Facebook Messenger. How do you do that? What tools do you use to make that happen?
Okay, one of the best tools, well, number one, your marketing automation platform makes it easy to do that. Okay, so which is Infusionsoft. You can use MailChimp as well, but essentially I've got to have an email database marketing automation platform to actually manage my email subscriber list. Number 2, I then use a variety of tools. Number 1 for me is a platform called SumoMe.
SumoMe?
Yep.
SUMOME?
Yes. Sumo, SUMOME. SumoMe.
Okay. What does that do?
Okay, SumoMe is a sort of little bit like a Swiss Army knife app for your blog or for WordPress. Number 1, I use it in a variety of ways, but we'll just stick to the number 1 here on topic is, I have been known to go off topic occasionally, but we'll stick to the topic. I use it to create a welcome mat, which is, a welcome mat is really just a pop-up on steroids. It takes over the entire screen. To get rid of it, you've got to click on the bottom to get rid of it. But in the meantime, it says, get my 101 plus traffic tips ebook, how to actually get traffic without paying Facebook or Google a cent. It is a 55-page ebook, 12,000 words, a lot of value. And it's been downloaded about 110,000 times since we implemented it 2 years ago.
And that's how you built your mailing list from 20,000 to 120,000.
That's right. So that's one tactic. Okay. Number 2 is I use another tool called Opt-in Monster. And an Opt-in Monster essentially is an exit on intent email capture pop-up. So as we know, as we move our mouse to the top right of the screen to move away, the technology allows them to detect that's happening, and up pops going, you're leaving, here's another gift for you, which is my 5 tools I use to grow my blog to 4 million visitors a year, right? So, and I list some of these tools. So that generates about 600 to 1,000 email subscribers per month.
That's fabulous.
So,
all right, we got a wrap. So anything you want to finish up with?
No, just everyone be awesome. Just create content of consequence and do deep work, and then the world will show up if you learn to share that.
No, this has been great. Thanks. Jeff Bullas, JEFFBULLAS.com. He's been talking about content marketing and social media. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Pleasure. Thank you.